Are they on their way?
He has a class that gets done in like 5:30.
Okay.
So he was hustling here right after.
Okay. Well.
He just pulled up, I'm told.
Okay. Well, I mean, I guess there's also the public comments beforehand, so that can. But hopefully. Okay. Well, it's 6 o'clock. So I'm going to call to order the City of Rollingwood Board of Adjustments meeting Wednesday, January 11th, 2023. It is 6 o'clock.
Brad, can you pull the microphone in a little bit? Thank you.
So first order is a roll call. Start down at the end with Bob.
Robert Turner,
Kevin Shell.
Keith Martinson,
Jerry Spitel.
Brad O'Donnell. Okay. So the next item, I guess we will open the meeting to public comments. It is 6:01. This is for comments not relating to anything that's on the agenda today. This is for if anyone has to say anything unagended, and it usually is no.
Two people signed up.
Okay, then.
I have Duncan Ashworth first.
Well, that's before I knew this. So if it has to do with the tennis courts,
That's for when we actually call. We'll do a public comment on the regular agenda items.
Okay.
So that's what you're there for. Okay. What about the second one?
Brian Ash.
Yeah, same.
Same thing. Okay, that's what I thought. Okay, it is 6:01. We will close the public comments, and we will move on to consent agenda item number 2. This is discussion and possible action on the minutes from January 26th, 2022, from the Board of Adjustments meeting. I move to approve the minutes.
I will second it.
All those in favor say aye.
I have a-
Aye.
Oh, wait a
I
minute.
have one quick question.
Okay.
In these minutes, there was 2 comments by the city attorney that said, 1, it's up to us to determine whether or not we want to have any additional public hearings.
Okay.
And then at the very end, there was another comment that said, we will review your rules and let you know what your rules say.
Okay.
I have asked a number of times, I've never gotten a clear understanding on,
Okay, I'll tell you what. Since that is pretty much
sorry,
along with regular agenda item number 3, we'll ask that then.
Thank you.
Unless if you want
Thank
to
you.
change the
Sorry.
minutes right
Sorry.
now. Okay, so all those in favor of approval of the minutes?
Aye.
Aye. All right. So we will close consent agenda item number 2. It is 6:03. Now we will open regular agenda item number 3. This is the public hearing, discussion, and possible action on a request for special exemption under the city's Code of Ordinances, Section 107-491A2, to permit the enlargement and expansion of the nonconforming tennis courts at the Western Hills Athletic Club located at 4801 Rollingwood Drive. It is 6:03, and we will open public comments on this.
Can we get the attorney to weigh in first?
Yes, actually, that makes sense. So never mind, strike the public comments. Bob, if you want to re-ask your question.
yeah, so, when I read the minutes, I saw 2 comments by the attorney at the meeting at that time. The first one basically said, it's up to us whether or not we want to have another public hearing after there's already been 3, and we tabled this. Then at the end of the minutes, it said, staff is gonna go back and look at our rules and determine whether or not we need to or not. So it's 2 different things, and all I'm trying to understand is, what did they decide on? And regardless of how it got posted, what did the attorneys come up with?
Well, I didn't come up with anything because nobody told me I needed to look at the rules and come back with an answer to a question.
Fair enough.
That said, I concur with whoever was here last time. I don't know if it was me or not. That was 3 months ago. I've been to hundreds of meetings since then.
Now with that said, I think it's terrible that we're gonna have a posted of a public hearing and we're gonna go, we ain't gonna hear it.
No, we're here. We're going to have a public hearing. these folks the applicants are gonna have opportunity to present their arguments to this body. This body is gonna make a decision on the special exception request before them. I don't see any issue with that. Is that?
Well, the question is whether this is a continuation of the previous public hearing or a new public hearing.
All right, I think I can address this at this point. All right,
Yeah,
so-
I'm totally confused.
The-
This looks like whether it's a continuation of the previous public hearing or it's, how did we post it?
We posted it as a public hearing. We did notice as a continuation. I will say, I think the real question at the end of the agenda was, do we have to notice again at the end of the last meeting?
all right.
And so that was something we were going to look into, whether or not we felt if we were going to have a continuing public hearing, should we notice? We went ahead and did in an abundance of caution, just to make
Okay.
sure we met all of those requirements. But
All right.
I think as far as do you have to have a public hearing, if there is evidence that wants to be considered as part of the question before you today, you do
All
have
right,
to have a
thank
public
you. I have
hearing.
a much better understanding. So yes, this is a continuation of the previous public hearing.
Okay.
So everything that was put into evidence then is still part of the application and part of the evidence that you can rule on and decide. If you want to continue that and have additional input, you can certainly do so. It's up to this body to make that decision.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so this actually is a great segue into something I was planning on doing. I was going to address everyone about kind of trying to lay some background to this before we start. So as it was just said, this is a continuation. Everything that was said prior is still considered to have been said now. So don't feel like you have to repeat anything. That being said, I just want to, I'm going to read, I made notes. I'd like to address both the public and the presenters in an effort to focus our discussion more in a manner that will help the board make a decision and maybe even speed things up, I hope. I normally wouldn't make such comments before a meeting, but seeing as this is a continuation of multiple meetings, this is a topic that everyone's very familiar with, and we all have read these agenda packets multiple times. So we are discussing today the expansion as presented for permit, not the renovation and repairs. The renovation and repairs was discussed in the last meeting that was approved. It's actually been approved multiple times in many ways. So again, we are discussing the expansion as it was presented. Now, there were a lot of letters of support today, and I read them all. It was a lot. And in general, I just have to say that I agree with them. I think that the expansion of this court would be a great thing. But that's not the issue today. The issue today is about the location of the courts. So to narrow this down, there's nothing holding back WAC right now from building an additional 2 courts. They can build 2 courts. What's holding WAC back right now is their current proposed location of those courts, specifically being built outside of the allowable building area and in a greenbelt zone for the City of Rolling Wood zoning or ordinance. That is why we are here. Thus requiring a special exception from the BOA to extend this already non-conforming court into the greenbelt zone. So the issue isn't if they can build more courts, it's where. So special exceptions per our zoning ordinance can be granted for the extension of a non-conforming use, and that's why we are here, because they have a current non-conforming use and they are trying to extend that. So the question is why they should be granted a special exception. So essentially, we're looking for solid reasons today on why a special exception should be granted. Not that the courts are going to be great and help the community. It's the special. It's an exception to the zoning rules of being able to build in the greenbelt setback zone. So we already know why they don't Sorry, I'm not very good at speaking. So we already know why WAC doesn't want to redo the design, and that was discussed in the last meeting. It is because they have a current design, and they don't want to pay for it twice. That's, you know, that's fine, but the board is not in a position to grant variances for designs that were done in a non-conforming way. So I think it would be useful and logical for everyone here that's presenting and addressing us today to address more of why the location has to be where y'all are proposing it to be now. Not that you want to build courts, but why it has to be in that setback zone, and maybe even more importantly, why you can't build it where you're currently allowed to build it now. And so that's kind of the gist of where I think we need to go with this. Do y'all kind of agree with that? Is there anything more that needs to be said? I had more written down, but I feel like I'm just beating
I don't
a
mean to be
horse.
negative,
Sure.
but my take on the ordinance is they don't have to justify why. My take on the ordinance is we need to say that it is not detrimental to the city.
Okay.
I don't think they have to prove the positive. I think the question is not proving the negative.
Okay. So, yeah, everyone can talk about anything they want. That's what this is for. But if we can try to limit the comments to what was said prior, and if we can maybe, everyone has written many letters about how much they want these courts to be built, and that's great. I you know, if you want to come up and say that, that's fine. I would appreciate it if you wouldn't, because I just don't think that's really relevant. We're really trying to figure out why the court deserves to break the rules and why a special exception should be granted for that. So I'm going to stop talking because I don't want to talk anymore. So I will open up the public comments. It is 6:12 and the public hearing. So who's first?
First is Mr. Duncan Ashworth.
Thank you very much for your time. My name is Duncan Ashworth. I live at 2910 Hatley Drive, and I've been a resident here in Rollingwood for over 33 years. And first of all, I wanted to mention at some of the meetings, I know that the people on Zoom weren't able to see the presentation, and I don't know, is that very?
They're not able to see anything live that's happening. They can see it if it's in the packet. So whatever's in the
Oh,
packet,
I see.
they can look at
They
it
need to
in the
look at
packet.
that. Okay. Thank you very much for that introduction, because my presentation is strictly around the additional 2 courts. And can we pull up my presentation, please? That's not it.
That's not, no, go.
That's it. Okay, the main point of presenting today is to do a recap of what was said at the last meeting. So I wanted to go over some of those details. I've tried to stick strictly to numbers and factual information. So what we're talking about here is the additional 2 courts to the left of those all within that oval there. So it's an additional 2 courts, and so we'll just be talking about that area right now. So if we can go to the next. So regarding the special exception request, the request is to expand from 2 to 4 courts, and one of the statements made was to enhance the use and beauty of the club, including the city. So that's in bold letters there. The codes are cited, which does not allow tennis courts to be constructed in an area. These are all, number 2, this is all about why a special exception rather than a variance is being requested. And the number 3 is that the Board of Adjustment is allowed to, approve an exception at all. And number 4 down here, and this was a bit of surprise, and stop me if I'm wrong, but I believe that the Western Hills Athletic Club is suing the city of Rollingwood. That Western Hills Athletic Club is composed of both Rollingwood, non-Rollingwood residents, but are suing the city of Rollingwood. And so in our defense, for the city of Rollingwood, I assume that those legal fees are coming out of the taxes that we pay to the city. Okay. So if we can go to the next slide.
I don't think I mentioned it before, but I did want to keep the 3-minute,
Yeah.
okay, it's going. Okay, go on, please.
Where am I?
Oh, the timer
Up,
just
up,
went
up.
off?
Let's give him
I need
Okay.
just a couple minutes.
Okay,
So quantifying what these extra courts are per the plan, it's 14,400 square feet of additional hard surface. That's in the open box on the left. And of that 14,400 square feet, it includes 2,280 square feet in the setback. And that would require the removal of that grove of trees that's highlighted there. So let's go to the next. And so looking at this grove of trees, these oak trees, and that's a tennis court fence on the left-hand side, that's what would be cut down in order to make way for this other 14,000 square feet of hard surface. Okay, one more. So the proposal as it stands includes cutting down about 20 oak trees, 14,000 square feet of hard surface, almost 2,300 feet of encroachment in the setback, and that there's a lawsuit pending, and the residents of Rollingwood will have to foot the bill on that.
Well, thank you very, very much. I appreciate it. Sorry to rush you off, but we've
Okay.
gone past the
That
three
actually is
minutes.
the end. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So sorry I didn't mention it before, but we are sticking to 3 minutes, and then does that have an alarm or anything? It does. Perfect, okay, the alarm will now go off.
Next is Marie Timmerman.
I'm actually with the WAC, so.
Okay, you can,
I reserve.
sure, Sure.
I need to.
okay, next.
Ann Turner.
I was hoping to respond to the last comment.
Brian Knapp.
To, what, hold on, what, to respond,
Last comment.
that's not, an availability for you, I guess, so if there's something you wanna say, you might as well
Okay.
say it now.
Well,
If there's new information presented, how can you speak about it
That's a fair point.
beforehand?
But I can comment, I know I was here, my name's Ann Turner, I live at 301 Almarian Drive. I've been a resident of Rollingwood since 95. I've been a member of the pool since 99. I've served on the pool board for 5 years. In the past, it's been several years. I'm just, comment right now, responding to some objections to pickleball noise that were raised in the previous meeting, and I know the pool board commented that they are planning to control that with with different ways, one including posting the time limits for when they can play pickleball, which I think it should be recognized that that can be not sufficient. When I was on the pool board, there were several incidents of people entering the pool board when it was closed. You would find the evidence. So obviously the open pool hours were open. Also, just recently, while the pool was open, I noticed someone was skating on the tennis courts, which I believe it's posted that that's not allowed. But there was staff there, and it was not being enforced. And finally, it is posted in the parking lot, no idling, And you can see people idling in that parking lot. And in fact, I was at the pool board meeting last month. I arrived a few minutes early, 15 minutes early, and there was one car in the parking lot. It really wasn't open, the pool wasn't open, so only board members and maybe Amanda and I were there. And there was a pool board member that was idling in their car for 10, 15 minutes. They were 20 feet away from a sign that said, no idling. So I think if they want to enforce the pickleball noise restrictions, they're going to have to think of something more than just posting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is Brian Nash.
Like Maria, I
Okay, that's
don't want to be redundant.
fair enough. Next.
Sarah Hudson.
Hi, I'm Sarah Hudson, 2805 Rockaway. I've been a resident of Rollingwood for over 30 years, a member of the pool for 28, I think. Serve on the city council, and we did get clarification, confirmation from our city attorney that council members are allowed to come speak before the Board of Adjustment. There is no issue with the number of us that are here because we do not have any jurisdiction over you all. We don't have any say over your decisions. So there is no Open Meetings Act violation. We have not broken any rules by being here. And we don't lose our right to speak up because we're serving on council. I'm glad that you clarified what your charge is, because what the pool board is asking is permission to not follow our rules. And in order for that to be allowed, there has to be a finding that there will be, that the granting of the special exception will not adversely affect the public health, convenience, safety, or general welfare. There is nothing in the proposed plans that is a benefit to the residents of Rollingwood or to the city, because this is a private club. The benefit would be to members, some of whom are Rollingwood residents, some are not. We don't even know how many that is. That was asked for at the last meeting, and the board members were not able to provide that. When we moved in and were looking to purchase a membership, there were two lists, and memberships were bought from the pool board, from the pool itself. There was one list for Rollingwood residents and a separate list for just general memberships. And my understanding at the time was that there was a number of memberships that could only be Rollingwood residents. I don't know what happened to that. It disappeared with the memberships being sold on the open market. But there had to have been a reason for that. There's also a limit on how many memberships can be there. So it seems like if there was not restrictions that the city had or some agreement in place that would have been expanded in the past. But because it's a private club, we have to look at what the impacts are on the residents around the pool, and demonstrate, it needs to be demonstrated in order to approve that the general welfare will not be damaged.
I think that's 3 minutes. You can say like one or two more sentences, but
Okay,
please.
I was gonna say, last time, the pool board got to speak for an hour and 15 minutes.
It's their right to. They're presenting. This is our
the-
public time.
I
So
understand that, but the rules also, the guidelines say 30 minutes, and that 10 minutes is supposed to be available for other people. Anyway, there are issues with noise that will absolutely increase with the possibility of 9 pickleball courts up there, because you can have 4 tennis courts that can be striped for 2 pickleball courts each, and then there's another sport court that has another pickleball court.
All right.
that's up
Thank-
there already.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but I am trying to keep time limits. So thank you. I'm sorry.
Okay. And they're gonna have the same limits?
Yes. Well, not the presenters themselves get a significant more time. But that's not part of the public comment period.
Okay, that seems highly unequitable.
Well, that's what the rules say. So
No, I don't think it is.
I'm not here to fight about the rules. It's 3 minutes. Let's just move on, please. Thank you.
Okay. Parking, traffic, drainage, and the loss of a lot of trees. Those are all detriments to the community.
Thank you.
Okay, well, we'll try to keep this really short, and we'd be happy to.
Wait, you're presenting with WAC though, right?
Yeah, so.
Okay, so you're not part of this group then.
Yeah, okay, but,
It's a procedural thing, you're in public comment.
yeah. That being said, we'll still keep it as short as possible, so I'm gonna, wait a minute.
Yeah, we haven't.
Oh, I'm sorry, should we, oh.
Yeah.
Well, you could give a 3-minute public comment.
Oh, no, I'll wait.
Okay.
The next is Kent Neshin, if I pronounced it correctly?
Yeah, I'm a member of WAC.
That's fine, but
I
you're-
just wanted to make a comment
Go for
based
it.
on that.
Yep.
I'm not a member, resident of Rollingwood. I do live in Westlake. And I just wanted to address some of the things that have been said by Ann, who is a current pickleball player at our court. And that, yes, there is noise, and we have thought of a few different ways to reduce this. And one of them was saying that we would only have pickleball striped on the inside courts, that the two outside ones would not be striped for pickleball. We haven't had any complaints of our current restrictions for no playing before 9:30 on the tennis courts against the backboard, and then of course after dusk. So there's been no record of any of that. This is a private club, but at any point in time, since I've been a member for the last 12 years, there has always been a membership for sale. And unlike other private clubs in this, in all of Austin, you get your money back. It's not like you join so you could join for 5 years, and all it's done is gone up, is that you can sell that membership. Anyone who wants to play, there is a public benefit here. The City of Austin provides pickleball courts, tennis courts, swimming pools. Rollingwood has not. And, I know you stated that one of your neighbors has this. There's nothing you can do about it. It's loud, there's lots of cars. And it's because there's nowhere for people to go. This is the fastest growing sport. And if we can provide that, everyone knows someone who's a member at WAC. They can go there and play as a guest fee. Our guest fee is $1. We need to provide something so people aren't building these pickleball courts in their backyard. And so I would say it does provide a benefit there.
Yeah, thank you. That's it? Your word side now? Okay, all right, then we will close the public comments at 6:28. And I guess, I don't have it written down what the official word is, but I guess we'll do the presentation from WAC. It's still 6:28, so.
So I think our plan is similar to last time. I'm gonna start out, keep it as short as possible, and then,
And please don't feel like you need to repeat everything that was said
Certainly not,
last time,
yeah.
because we all remember.
we'll keep it to the new stuff.
Okay.
And so, our slideshow, I think, includes everything, but we can flip through it as if it's a flip book, and you can get a really quick, or at least I will.
Let me interrupt real quick. I'm curious, what is the time limit?
20 minutes.
Okay.
But it's up to my discretion if I think they need more time.
I'm cool with that.
Okay.
So 20 minutes?
20 minutes, but I'm allowed to grant you more as long as you're not talking about, I don't know, something weird.
I have lots of, well, I could go on forever.
If it's relevant, I'll let you.
Yeah, well, I'll start. I'm going to be followed by Brian Nash and then Marie Timmerman. Marie was part of the WAC board 2 or 3 years ago and knows more of the history of this. Brian has the virtue of not caring anything about tennis, unlike Marie and I, who are avid tennis players, so he might be more credible. We've passed out what is, in effect, a new plan in front of you. It's in the slides, but the city asked us to print a clearer picture of it because the one we had was layered across a few plans. And so I'll talk about it in a second. I also have more for audience members if they'd like it.
Is your name on here?
Nope.
Can you introduce yourself?
So Zach Elkins, and so I'm a member of the WAC board, and also have with us, like the last 3 times, David Cazares, who designed these plans, and so we can talk more about how they came about in the various iterations, et cetera. So I'll try to stick to the new stuff here. I guess what's new on this slide is the new plan actually decreases our encroachment into the setback and our nonconformity with code. So that's an important thing, among other things on that plan. But I'm going to stick to some of the things that came up at the last meeting, including community feedback, which Brad noticed already. We had quite a bit of it, and our own outreach program, benefits to the community, a little bit on drainage, and a few other things. So I'm just going to go through these quickly. These all relate to our justification for redoing the current courts, and you granted us last time, so no need to do that. Pickleball we talked about extensively. I think this relates a little bit to, we talked about that last time. Maybe I'll start with pickleball noise, and Kent mentioned this briefly, but this, I think it was a subject of at least half an hour, maybe 45 minutes of our conversation last time. We have been experimenting with this since October on our sport court. It's been noted that Anne plays, so maybe she can give a sense of what that experience is like. We have also been playing a little bit, although informally, on the other courts. Members come with their own striping, set up a pickleball court, and they play it there. So it is in some sense a test of the noise there. We've interviewed the neighbors, and they haven't experienced any nuisance at all. Not all the neighbors, not everybody across on Wallace, they're a little bit further away, but we presume that the immediate neighbors haven't had any problems. And there aren't, and that's not to say that there aren't any, but just in our experience, it's been okay. We've also talked to members of or neighbors in the Hatley neighborhood where the current private pickleball court is, and as I think a couple of members of this board noted who are such neighbors, there is some concern, non-trivial concern about noise in our mind, and so that is by all means something we want to take into account. Brad mentioned some of the accommodations and abatements that we want to take up. One of them is similar to our backboard policy, which is no play before 9 a.m. Despite Ann mentioned some compliance issues with some of our stated rules at the club. I mean, I think there's only so far we can go to enforce some of these rules. But that particular one, the 9 a.m. one, has been abided by for the most part. The club doesn't really open much earlier than that, people can get on the court, but they have not been hitting the ball against the backboard before 9. We imagine that would be similar with pickleball. The next step, this is a gradual, incremental set of accommodations, would be, if there are nuisance issues with noise, to adopt some equipment. And actually, there's a specified set of paddles that Sun City, in their enormous senior living experience, has identified, so we could easily adopt those paddles. Significantly lower decibels, lower pitch, apparently not a nuisance, and so we could move to that if there were a problem. And we're in regular communication with the neighbors with whom we have an excellent relationship, and we expect to be able to monitor that carefully. We also note that there's some city ordinances about noise, and this applies not just to pickleball, but to basketball, everything else somebody might play in their yard. Baseball, crowds, two-stroke engines, everything that causes a problem for those of us living in the community. So this is something we obviously abide by. There's always ordinances on the books for that. One thing that came up last time, Kevin in particular asked us to reach out to membership and to the community to get a sense of how people feel about this. I mean, obviously we've already heard from 3 citizens here. who had spoken at previous meetings as well, and I don't disagree with anything that Ann, Sarah, or Duncan said. Duncan's name is on one of the streets in Rollingwood. He's lived there forever, has a lot of experience, so I take that very seriously, and I've appreciated his comments. In our outreach, we interviewed, first of all, our process. We have a survey, which we presented last time, and we got that sort of top-of-the-head response from those who filled out the survey. But we just figured for this kind of thing, what made more sense was to talk to people, have a more qualitative, in-depth interview with them, get a sense of what their feelings are with respect to the tennis, any other issues with respect to the club. Many of them felt free to expound on many other things. And we interviewed over 150 members of families. We have 400 families, and so it's a pretty big sample. These were long interviews. We also reached out into the community to interview people who we knew were skeptics of the process. And so, for example, I had a long interview with Brooke Brown, who's here tonight, and we spoke.
I didn't know it was an interview.
Okay, sorry. Interview is a strong word. We had a long conversation. In interview research, they're often called
I didn't know you were gonna talk about it tonight. I thought that was a private conversation between us.
Okay, so
Thank you.
you're welcome.
I just never explained to me that this would be one of my public views.
Okay, so I will refrain from talking about that in any ways, but suffice it to say that we reached out to people who we knew had concerns about the project, and those were very productive interviews, and I think in some ways much more collaborative approach to this problem. We interviewed our neighbors, as I mentioned, who are strongly in favor of this. Many of them just see this as really unsightly, the tennis courts, and want to see this done more quickly, or as quickly as possible. And as I mentioned, we talked to people in the Hatley neighborhood regarding that pickleball. Something on zoning constraints, history of the project. This is new. The next 5 slides talk about our exploration with new designs, and this is something that came up last time. And Brad's comment tonight is relevant to that. We do have permission, as per our last meeting, to rebuild the 2 existing courts. And Brad's question was, okay, why don't you find space within the setbacks to build those? And specifically, he had suggested shifting the 2 new courts down a little bit, which actually we explored independently of that, and I had forgotten that Brad had suggested that, but great minds think alike, and we think that is a great proposal, and I'll show that in a second, and that's actually what's before you in hard copy. So this is a slide, and again, David Cazares made these in his design firm, so he can talk more in depth about some of it if there are any questions about the details. The yellow peeking out there are the current structures. I use that with quotes since some of them are just sort of flat surfaces. But anyway, the structures that are in the setback. So on the right, you can see the 2 existing courts peeking out into the setback. And on the left, the volleyball court. So those are the 2 structures that are not in compliance. And then the purple is the design that we presented to you the last 3 meetings, which does encroach into the setback and increases our encroachment into the setback, which is not good. An alternative plan, which we showed you hypothetically, would be this one, and that it shifts everything to the setback. And as we described last time, we didn't entertain that. It overlaps with some of our existing buildings, the parking, this big beautiful tree at the bottom, and cuts out even more trees, so it's not ideal. Our next exploration was this, and it includes so-called California corners, and these essentially slice off the corners of each of the tennis courts about 10 feet from the end of the length and the end of the width. And this is great for tennis because it redirects the ball back to the baseline, so it's ideal in that way. It saves material costs, it saves on impervious cover and helps with drainage, but it also, not incidentally, it saves 800 square feet. If you do the math on each of those corners, it saves 800 square feet totally in terms of impervious cover, but also 400 square feet in the setback. So that was helpful, but we thought we could do better. And this is the design in front of you. And again, I'm going to call this the Brad O'Donnell plan. It essentially does what he suggested, and again, it's helpful, I think, in many ways. But what it does is retains the California corners, which are great. It repositions the court over the existing courts. If you go back to this one, if I can. Oops, sorry. This, it may not be obvious, is not built exactly, here it makes it clear, it's not built exactly on the existing courts. So it's actually shifted a little bit to the right and angled up, so it takes up more of the setback. And what we've done with this one is angle it so it's exactly positioned on the existing courts. And because of the California corners, and because we took out this 14-foot unsightly berm separating the two courts, which saved us 14 times 120 square feet, that plus building two new courts that are shifted down with California corners means if you total up the amount that we're in the setback, it's actually less than the amount that we're currently in the setback, which if you include the volleyball court and the tennis courts. So I guess one way to think about this is what we're proposing with this proposed design, and I don't know how you deal with this because this is different from what we've been proposing the last 3 times we've been before you. What we're proposing here actually decreases the amount in the setback compared to what's existing. So we're asking to build something that decreases our non-compliance with their code.
Oh, you mean in total?
In total.
So in total, this has less encroachment than exists now?
Than exists now.
Okay, interesting.
By 400 square feet,
Okay.
416 square feet,
to be precise.
to be precise. It's still in the setback. And we talked about historical reasons why these courts are built in the setback. And it's hard, given the shifting code in the 90s, to build them elsewhere, but we've done what we could to do that. I want to talk just quickly, another aspect of this is design and implementation. And I think what really matters is how we take these plans, finalize them, and execute them in a way that everybody's happy with them. The city, us, the neighbors, and I think that matters tremendously. I mentioned the California corners. There's a serious materials concern. We're suggesting timber posts, which by the way would be harvest from the trees that we would take down and mill. We're talking about dense landscaping, quite a few more trees than are up there now in good places. I will say that one of the huge costs to this, what we're doing, is taking down the trees that Duncan showed. None of us are happy about that, but we do feel that the new landscaping plan adds quite a few more trees, more shade capital, better trees in the right places, and we're also going to suggest, and I think this is helpful to the city, that we take the Oak Grove that's now currently between the park and the club. I'm going to call it the, let's see if I have a picture of it. Okay. Yeah, let's call it the Panhandle. If you were to think about this, it's analogous to the shape of the state of Texas. That Panhandle region, which is now cut off by a barbed wire fence, and is overgrown. It has some nice oaks, but is overgrown with a bunch of dead stuff and other things. We would suggest to take down the fence that separates the club from the park and actually create a really nice oak grove right there, which I think would be a nice benefit. Ameliorate a little bit some of the tree loss. And I will say also we're hesitant to talk about trees. Obviously, this is a subject of a city council meeting 2 or 3 years ago in which our tree and landscaping plan was approved. And we're hesitant to go back and relitigate the tree policy. We are very sensitive to that. We want to do as best as possible on all of this. In fact, we want to be a model demonstration project for every other project that you guys approve in Austin, or sorry, in Rollingwood. And that just being one of the details. The other aspects I think are, with respect to that, are drainage and other aspects of the design. With respect to drainage, let me talk about that briefly. So Kevin, you brought this up, and you mentioned at that meeting that through your service here on this board, you've gained what amounts to a PhD in drainage. I think we have about a high school degree. Sorry. But we've been tutored by our architects and our engineers, and I think we know a little bit more, maybe just enough to be dangerous. And, you know, obviously we have a detention pond, and we are going to take all the runoff from the courts and perhaps some of the other hardscape, I don't know, but certainly everything from the courts, and detain them in the pond and release them. But as you mentioned, Kevin, that's only one aspect of things. Volume matters just as much as flow, and we get that. We understand that now. And I don't know if any other resident or homeowner in Rollingwood is doing anything like this, but we would certainly explore and entertain ways to deal with the volume. And so that would mean perhaps, and I'm just suggesting that we explore this because I'm not a drainage expert, but there are things we could do with that water. So for example, we could irrigate it. Other members of the community suggested that we irrigate the ball fields and the rest of the park. I'm not sure we could do that. Some of us have a dream of putting 2 clay courts and 2 hard courts in this place. And the clay courts, which is this really special ecological clay that was built for the Southwest in California, takes very little water. But what water it does take, we could use from that detention pond. So that's a nice, in some ways, self-sustaining circle right there. So that would be really exciting to do. We'd love to do that. And again, this would be, again, a demonstration project and a model project for Rollingwood. And we'd be thrilled to do that. Community benefit. This is I think the last thing that came up at the last meeting. And Kent spoke to this to some degree. Part of our outreach to our club members meant going through and correcting our records and looking at our records and seeing who's who. Our records include phone numbers, addresses. We were able to identify Rollingwood residents through that. Our first count revealed 187 Rollingwood families of our 400. But then we went back and realized that many of those were business addresses in Austin and Westlake Hills, et cetera. So we actually had over 200. I forget the exact number, Rollingwood families in the pool. And so I'm sure you know, Rollingwood has 422 homes, so 422 families in Rollingwood. Almost half of Rollingwood families are in our club. So that is I think, a significant constituency. And another part, the other 200 who are not members of the club are perhaps ex-members. We have a lot of people whose kids grow old, get off to college, who decide to leave the club, but they're still experience the benefits of that. So that's another large amount. There are obviously some people who decide never to join the club. That's fine too. Kent mentioned that we have some programs, really aggressive guest policy. I don't know if you know, we also open up, we do really one thing, the pool, and 2 tennis courts, but they're not really tennis courts. And with the pool, non-members can participate in our master's program, which is sort of one of the main programs at the club. So that's available to non-members. We imagine doing something similar with tennis. Obviously, there's a balance between serving the people who pay over $100 a month to be part of the club and who've invested significant in purchasing a place in the club. So we want to serve them first. At the same time, we do want to make the club available for non-members. And I think just to close, if you were to, and I'll pass this over to Brian and Marie, if this were not private, I'm not sure we would be happy with that model. Half the families in Rollingwood obviously invested in the club and are paying the costs of keeping the club up and maintaining lifeguards and everybody else that the club needs. Were this a public pool and a public set of courts, obviously there'd be a cost to the residents in terms of taxes. I like the idea that the people who use the club pay for the club, but yet it's open, it's not exclusive, anybody can join, and obviously many have. If we built 2 absolutely beautiful tennis courts, which is our goal, to build the most beautiful tennis courts in Texas, we would have a line of hundreds of people waiting to play every single day. There are people from Round Rock who come down to play at Westlake High and everywhere else. It's really hard to get a court. If this were public, that is, if we had a different model for dealing with this, I think it'd be utter disaster. Okay.
You hit 20 minutes. That doesn't really leave much time for the rest of y'all to talk, though.
I was only gonna take a minute.
Yeah, I mean, if y'all were signed up for the public meeting, moved it to here, I'm totally comfortable with
I can
giving you
commit
3.
to being less than 3 for sure.
Perfect. I like
So I wanted to just address, Brian Nash for Chris Cove. It sounds like it's the tradition to say how long you've lived in Rollingwood. So I've been here since 2007, which I guess is 15 years. And I know that doesn't meet up with some of the folks, but it's a decent amount of time. So I've seen some change. Just to briefly address, I think your question was, why there?
Yes.
And that was one of the questions you wanted answered. I like to try and respond when a judge asks a question. So I think if you take a look at that diagram, we took to heart your comments at the last meeting, and we really went back. It wasn't just that we didn't want to have to redo a design, but rather that, I didn't really know the answer to your question, frankly. And so we tried to feel out how can we make 4 courts work here. Mm-hmm. And there's not many ways that this fits. Any other way that it fits, either it destroys more trees. We'd have to take out more trees. So if you look at that panhandle portion, and I don't know how to operate this, but I think if you look at this piece of paper in front of you, we'd have to get into that panhandle portion, and you're talking about a lot more trees get taken down going that direction than they do if we try and keep it close together. Another sort of part B to that is that you increase your impervious cover by spreading out your courts more. So if we can keep all 4 courts contiguous and compact, that's a more efficient design, and it reduces the amount of impervious coverage. And then I guess the sort of third point would be that if you look at this map that's in front of you on that piece of paper, as we start to move towards the back of the lot or any other places in the lot, again, we're dealing with other setback concerns. So now you're at the rear of the lot or other side lot lines and things like that. So there's not very many ways to fit in 4 courts that aren't encroaching on something. But we put a lot of sharpened the pencil and did as much as we could. And I say we, but it's our design team. They came up with a design that ultimately reduces the square footage that's encroaching from what it currently is.
So would you be the one most qualified to answer questions about the new layout, or is someone else probably more qualified of those here?
I'm rarely the most qualified to talk about any subject, but yeah, I might have to defer to either somebody that's part of our design team or Zach. But what's
it's
the
part
question?
of your design team here?
Yeah, I believe right
Okay,
here we've
well,
got.
then I'll save my questions for David at some point.
Yeah, and I don't know that he was planning to speak, but if you've got a question.
Well, I've got questions.
Yeah,
Oh,
we
great.
have specific questions about
But
the
we'll
design.
go ahead and let you finish.
Let's hear all of it this time
Yeah.
and then do the question.
Yeah, so I guess the other thing, I kind of wanted to answer that question first. I think you did a great job of sort of, signposting the fact that there were a lot of comments, but I think they got discounted as being, well, we just like 4 courts. But I wanted to clarify that, as Zach described, the interviews that we had with the folks that were providing comments were not just, do you like the idea of 4 courts, but rather, here's our proposed project. It's in the encroachment, it increases the encroachment. Would you support that, or do you have a problem with it? So it is going to the point of what we're here for today, which is this subject. And then I guess the sort of final point is the standard for a special exception is different than what I think you guys deal with 99% of the time.
We don't have a standard for it. yet
Well,
at this point.
I guess
This is
I
all
will say
new.
that according to the reg or the regulation, what you're considering in the context of a variance is there a hardship? And you have a 7-factor test for that. Here, this is a question of, does it adversely affect the community? And so, you know, you were saying like these comments aren't necessarily relevant to that, but what, I guess we feel like we keep getting like all these comments about, well, this is bad for the community because of drainage, or it's bad because of this. And so we're trying to explain, you know, we've interviewed the community, we've tried to work on pickleball abatement issues. I think the conclusion you draw from that is that it's not adversely affecting, and that's the question that I think you have to answer when you're considering it.
I think that's very fair.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, if you could keep it under 3 minutes, we'll just transfer your public time to now. I'd appreciate it.
Hi, my name is Marie Timmerman. I live at 501 Vale Street. I'm a member of the WAC Club, and I am a former board member. Brad, you had suggested that we don't want to redesign because we don't want to spend more money. Yes, that's obviously a concern for anyone, but part of it is we started this process in the summer of 2020. We are now at January 11th, 2023. And we've tried really hard. We've worked really well with city staff. There have been a couple of people in opposition that have really put a lot of roadblocks in our way. And I'm not here, don't want to be unneighborly, not my goal this evening, but it's been a really challenging process. That being said, just this Board of Adjustments process, you know, the first meeting was in June. We went through it. We got approval contingently on getting letters from the adjacent neighbors, the 2 letters. We got those letters. We gave them to the city. I had an email from Carrie Kaler after we got her those letters that said, I spoke with legal. Here are your next steps. The BOA approved the variance conditional of the adjacent neighbors offering approval. I will need letters from the 2 adjacent neighbors. As soon as I get those letters, I will send this back to City Council so City can approve as owners of the park. I will want those neighbor approvals so I can put them in the council packet. Once their approval is on the record, I will release the permit. That was in June of 2021. We kind of let it go for a couple weeks, and then we get a call from Carrie saying, you guys have to go back and do it again. And the reasoning for that was someone who was opposed to the project brought it to the city's attention that it was improperly noticed. Improperly noticed by the city, not by the WAC. So we had to come back again and do that meeting. We spent a lot of time again talking about drainage, I mean hours, and things that we already had approved, landscape, drain, those are already approved. And so I still don't understand why we continue to talk about them, but maybe someday I'll get it through my thick head, I don't know. After that, we were approved on 2 of the variances, and as you know, we had a 3-2 vote on the last one, which was not enough for approval. We needed a 4-1. So I mean, I just think those facts on their own sort of lend a little bit of we've been put through the ringer a little bit on this, and we're just trying to build tennis courts. I see all these houses go up in the neighborhood with lots of impervious cover, and it seems like they're able to build. Why is it that our project is being treated differently? I mean, I understand we're a park, but it seems like at least we benefit some of the community. I mean, if you all want us to benefit every single person in the community, then I guess you should never approve anything at all, because most of the things that come before you are for one single resident. My last comment is, in a follow-up meeting to the 9/13 Board of Adjustment meetings, y'all had another meeting. It wasn't videoed, but you could hear the voices. And it was revealed in that video that before the decision to have that second meeting, that the city attorney was consulted, and the attorney did not think that they didn't know who or if anybody had standing to challenge the notice requirement. They also suggested that they were not of the opinion that the meeting was necessary. But it was said you went forward with it out of an abundance of caution, and now we're here today. I have to say that one kind of made my head explode a little bit after being through all
I get
these.
it. Thank you, though. Appreciate it. we all have any more presenters? All right, at this point, I think, let's close the presentation.
Can I just ask one question? Did you want an explanation on the lawsuit thing that came up in public comment? Are you guys good on that? You could explain that to
I
me.
mean, I think I'll let everyone ask questions if it comes up to them, but, I mean,
Let's just move on.
yeah. All right, so it is 7 o'clock. We were going to close the discussion.
Rick,
the-
you wanna say
the
something?
presentation?
Yes,
You got a person wants to talk.
I don't.
procedural issue.
Okay.
Under the rules for the Board of Adjustment, after the applicant.
Point of order, what is her standing? Is she the legal attorney? Is she our liaison? Is she a resident? Or is she a council member? What is her point of standing?
I don't know.
I'll explain if I have a chance.
Maybe this would be better have been discussed at the beginning of the meeting.
I'm
for a
trying to
non-
follow the procedure in the Board of Adjustment rules.
Well, you're not
What
on
is
the
her
Board of
standing?
Adjustment, so I'm sorry.
Well, the
This
rules,
isn't a time for it, and I think probably the time would have been on the non-agenda item at the very beginning.
I didn't know the rules wouldn't be followed.
As far as I'm concerned, we are following. Is there any rules that we're not following?
Yeah, I can point them out to the
I don't
city
know.
attorney.
It's,
We
the
make
the
our
board
own-
is in
we-
charge
Yeah,
of it.
make our
I think
rules.
we're following our rules, so at least I hope so.
May I state my objection?
I think you might have to wait till after the meeting.
I can
Is she in order, Mr. Attorney?
This is not my meeting, this is your meeting.
I'm
This-
sorry.
He's the
I
chair.
think there's a time and place for it, and right in the middle of their presentation isn't the time for it.
May I read it?
No. In fact, I think I'd ask you to sit down, please.
The rules state that after the applicant.
I object. I terribly object. You were told you may not speak, and you are doing it again.
Presentation by an interested party. This is subsection 9 of the Board of Adjustment Rules of Procedure.
I don't know what to do.
There's not a sign-up sheet for the interested party comments. Then there is rebuttal by the applicant and rebuttal by staff and then questions.
Okay, thank you.
I'd like to make my that I would like to.
No, there was a time and place to make statements, and it's not now.
I'd like the record to reflect that I'm an interested party and I would like my opportunity to present my 3-minute comments.
You had that time, and it has since passed. Thank you. Okay, so we are now moving on. It is 7:02. We're going to move on to the discussion of the this. I guess right now I have some questions for the designer, or someone that can answer some of those questions. Was that someone over there? Okay, well, while we're waiting, does anyone have anything to talk about?
He's here.
Here he is.
Oh, it's you, okay. So I liked that the design has moved in the direction of less encroachment into the setback, and I like that you've started to move the new courts further, I guess we'll call it planned south. Why couldn't you move it completely out?
David Cazares, MWM Design Group. I represent the engineering firm. We can continue to move it south a little bit further, but the closer we go that direction, the closer we get to the existing buildings. There will be some over excavation that has to happen for the construction of the retaining walls that are probably going to have to be there. And so we don't want to show it so close that we undermine the existing buildings.
Okay. How far away do you need to be from them?
That I don't know because we haven't done engineering on the walls.
Okay. So do you think it would be infeasible to continue moving the two new courts towards the building?
No, I don't think so. What has to happen is we need to get a complete design on the engineering of the walls so that we know what the encroachment is. We probably also would want to have a geotechnical engineer investigate the existing foundations and check the stability of the slope of the soil adjacent to those buildings to make sure that it was stable enough, and then you would work the two together to figure out where that line would actually be.
So I think that the bigger question is, why, if you can move the courts to the southwest some, can you move them enough to get it out of the setback or not?
If you move it that far, the edge of the retaining wall is about where the overhang of the building is. So it's really, really close. And I don't recall if it's completely out of the setback, but it got it much further.
Yeah, I mean, because one of the things we talked about last time was sliding these courts so that they weren't in the setback, so that we could all be sitting home nicely having dinner tonight. And
Yeah, I mean, you could put the other two courts where the basketball court is, right?
No, I'm not talking about I'm just talking about sliding them. I understand why we
Right.
want them together and all that stuff. So, all right, thank
Yeah,
you.
I mean, it gets closer, but it's not entirely.
Yeah, we're just in the opinion that all this could be gone if just those two new courts were just not in the setback, and we're just trying to figure out why. For me, like, the one issue I have with this entire thing is that they're in the setback, and it looks like they don't have to be, and so I'm looking for a reason why they have to be in the setback, and
So-
I that's what I want to know. If I can get a solid reason for why they have to be in the setback,
So
that would go a long way to get a yes vote.
So for us as designers, there's two things, I think. One is the overall construction cost, which is not usually something that you guys are normally concerned with, but there's an overall construction cost with splitting up the courts. There's a space issue with getting it close, with getting it all the way out in the configuration we have shown. The blue example that you guys had in front of you shows all four courts out of the setback area. But that has a much different impact to the existing site than where we're showing it now, right? Now, if we move it all the way out, now we're developing in probably most of the area that has not been previously developed before.
Okay.
So now we have a huge impact to the site, whereas before, on the current plan, we're developing in areas that have already been developed. The existing retaining wall, the existing tennis courts, and the existing volleyball court. And yeah, we do have to take out a few more trees in order to get that in there, but the impact to remove the few trees that we're choosing to remove with the configuration versus the trees we would have to remove to get it all the way out is significantly different.
Gotcha. See, there's an answer.
Okay.
Yeah.
Of this plan, how much, I can't tell from this plan how much of the two new courts are actually in the encroachment.
Mr. Turner, can you please ask your question in the microphone so we can pick it up? Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Of the new plan, has anybody done a calculation that says, I mean, I got that we're reducing the overall amount by 416 feet in the setback. Great. But how much of the new two courts are in the setback? Has anybody done that calculation?
We did do that calculation. Well, do you remember what the number was?
I don't remember the number.
It was,
I'm sorry, can you speak into the mic, please?
I want to say it was about half. I don't remember the exact number, but I think it was about 2,200 square feet of current encroachment, the tennis courts and the volleyball court, and I want to say that we were about 1,200 square feet of encroachment with the adjustment.
Thank you.
So I'm looking at this new map we got today. It looks, the old setback was only 10 feet back from the property line, if I understand right.
In the original design?
The original one.
That's correct. It was about 11 feet, but
Okay,
yes.
something. This appears to be about 20 feet back on the setback. Is that true?
That is, yes, and that's because we've angled it to align with the existing courts. So it's not a straight 20 feet because
Yeah,
it's at on.
but it's
the-
close to 20 feet.
Yes.
And the setback should be, we're arguing over a 30-foot setback, correct?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Thank you.
I have a question, maybe the board remember this, but I thought in one of the previous, this was when I was on the board, but in one of the previous times I was asked why these courts couldn't be moved south. I believe it was mentioned there was a drainage feature that was previously required that was prohibiting this.
There's an existing draw that runs basically where we're not developing. that's like, think of it as like a big ditch. And
Okay.
so moving the courts there covers up that existing ditch.
Okay.
I don't remember the specific question, but what you're talking about right now, that would be my
Okay,
answer.
so there is no drainage features that's in the way now.
So
I mean, everything
there's,
could be fixed, I imagine.
I'm just, it was a
Yeah.
reason why this couldn't be done at a
Yeah,
previous
no,
meeting, and now
that's
that doesn't,
fair point.
it's not
Drain-
there anymore. I'm
yeah.
just trying to understand.
so the thing that Maria's talking about is the permit that we have with TCEQ. If we start shifting things around, then we have to go back through that whole process.
Well, you're gonna have to
get
go
them-
through that process anyways.
I understand that, but I was under the impression there was a physical structure that was,
There's an enormous tree which you would encroach upon. I mean, there is a rain garden, but obviously that can be.
Okay.
It's the tree that's in the way, shifting the existing course out.
okay, but it's not a problem now with what you're proposing, or you're working
It's
around
not
to
a-
deal
it's-
with it.
The new courts that are,
It's the same problem on both designs, and we've treated it the same. So the encroachment on the big tree is the same in both designs.
Okay.
It's not, there's a little bit of difference, but it's not significant.
Okay.
Were you the drainage engineer?
I have a drainage engineer that works for me.
Gotcha. Are you familiar with the design of the drainage as is
I
right
am.
now?
Yes, sir.
So I'm just spitballing here for something for y'all to think. I really like that the encroachment into the setback with the new design is overall less than it is now. And so I think that it's definitely a step in the right direction. I don't think that's getting me 100% there to say yes, but I would think maybe if they gave a little bit more, like if they held back more water than they're required to by law, that would help the community a little bit more. So they're reducing the impact on the setback, they're reducing the outflow of water a little bit. Is that something that would interest y'all to hear more about if the engineering design could incorporate that?
I think it would be interesting to hear about, but I don't see it.
Yeah,
I mean,
okay.
it's
Well,
not-
sure,
it's
I mean,
not
you
what's
don't see it, it'd
presented
have
to
to be
us, and-
designed, I mean, but it's the idea of would they be willing to do it? And, roughly can,
I mean, if you came in originally and said, here's the benefit we're gonna give to the community, we would have absolutely considered that. I
Yeah.
would have considered that at least.
do you think that
But I don't see that
retaining more water and letting less water out, per whatever restrictions you're being held to right now, do you think that would be feasible?
It is technically feasible to do, and we are actually over detaining the amount of water right now with
Sure.
the current design. I don't have that quantified. I don't know what that is exactly.
Are you releasing it at a slower rate as well?
We are not, we're releasing it at the pre-development rate,
Pre-development,
which
okay.
is, pre-development in this context means as it sits
Now.
today.
Yes, okay. Now, I think that so their detention would have to get bigger if they released the water out slower. But that would impact beneficially everyone downstream. It would,
Well, the downstream is the single biggest drainage issue outside of Edge Grove
and this
in
would
the
just
city.
be one little bit,
And this doesn't really help that.
it would help
It would help some, which is why I would be interested in learning and hearing more about it.
Sure.
But we don't have enough information.
No, we don't.
Close to it right now.
course
than we do. I'm just saying, it's an interesting way to approach the problem of, we're gonna give something to the community back.
Well,
That's
see,
not what's in front of us.
that's what I would consider, like, this is a special exception. Like, I think we could maybe make a special exception if there's give and take. And instead of complying with the rules, for me to have a yes vote, I think that has to be some give and take. So I don't have any more questions for you. Sure.
Two things.
Use the microphone, please.
So I'm obviously not an engineer, but my understanding is our current drainage drainage plan actually improves upon the status quo in terms of drainage. Is that right, David? And we're also more than willing, happy, thrilled to think about reclaiming that water and doing something with it and returning lower volume. Not just lower rate, but lower volume. We could use the water on irrigation, we could use it on the clay courts. We'd be thrilled to do that. I don't know what we would need. I mean, we could express that in whatever you would vote on tonight, whatever materials you'd vote on, we'd be happy to explore that. David and I have talked about that already, and we're
Do you know what the impervious cover of the site is currently?
around 49%, right? Oh, no, currently, or in our no.
Currently, the proposed design is gonna be at 50%, it's a little bit less than that right now.
So
And we
It's about
just,
50.
about 50 now?
About 50 pre-development, it's about 50 post-development.
but the new plan cuts down 800 square feet, the California coordinate plan, so we're decreasing the impervious cover. No. No, we're talking about my point was the comparison of the plan we just submitted tonight compared to what we submitted last time decreases impervious cover by 100 square feet.
I don't think I think we've kind of already said that the drainage issue isn't the big thing here. And I think anything that we're talking about right now.
No, I
is-
don't think the drainage is a big issue, but I'm thinking that if they improve the drainage beyond to what they have to go above and beyond to, so the site is releasing less water than it currently is, so like
Yeah.
that would help the community out.
I see your point, and I think that's beneficial. I think that would be a great way for people to approach this going forward.
Mhm.
I'm just saying in the context of this right now, we're not gonna get to an answer that's gonna say, yes, I'm for this, for anything that they can do. They're gonna share right in this meeting that's gonna say drainage is just enough to get over the other hurdles.
Sure.
We
Well-
can keep talking about it if you want. I'm just saying there's, sure, they could do it, but we'd have to see a whole lot of details on it. And then we'd have to look at just the big picture. Does it really even improve things?
Sure. Well, I'll toss this out. So I am in a civil in engineer, and I haven't done it for a while, but drainage design was my thing. I just tossing this out. If they were to capture the water, and so for TCEQ, a thing that they do, which is kind of neat, is if you do like rainwater harvesting, catching it from the roof, that actually they will consider those areas that you have captured to not be impervious cover. And so I think if they're at 50% right now, I'd say if we put in a rule saying that you have to capture water per TCEQ's rule to reduce your impervious cover, your technical impervious cover down to say like 30 or 40%. That would be a way to put it in on our end, put it in writing in a way that would help benefit the community more. Now it takes all of us to vote here. So if y'all aren't for it, then obviously it's not going to work. But as of right now, I'm for me to vote yes on this, I need some give and take. But if y'all aren't see that way and y'all are all voting no anyways, then it doesn't matter. So I don't have any more questions for you. Don't feel like you have to stand up there. Do y'all have any questions? Okay, thank you. Sorry to keep you standing there.
We're talking.
Hmm?
We're talking now.
Yes.
So, Ms. Hudson pointed out that this really boils down to section 491C, which specifically says, prior to granting a special exception, the board shall make a finding that is empowered under this chapter to grant a special exception that the public conveyance and welfare will not be substantially or permanently injured in the granting of this special exception. And it will not adversely affect the public health, conveyance, safety, or general welfare.
Mm-hmm.
That's the entirety of C. The lawsuit that was mentioned, which I think was addressed by Marie, was because of people's feelings that they were abused by this system and by the city, having to redo this multiple times. That's not an issue. The trees, they already have permits to do the trees, the parking, the drainage. In my opinion, it doesn't matter. In my opinion, it all boils down to their new proposal. They are reducing the existing encroachment as it is today
Which I think is great.
by 416 feet.
Mhm.
That is an improvement. It is not any sort of permanently injuring or granting by doing this. It's an improvement.
Mhm.
To me, it's a slam dunk. It's a yes.
Now I see where you're going with this, and I totally follow it. This is a special exception, and there's not, it's vague, and do you think that there's any merit in thinking about why it should be special, why they should be special?
It has nothing to do if they're special or not. They today have a situation where they have a non-conforming use.
Yeah.
That was not of their doing. Those tennis courts were there prior to the city coming in and saying, we now have a new greenbelt setback.
Mm-hmm.
They are improving or decreasing the amount of that setback with this new design. It is an improvement. That to me is the only thing that we should consider.
I think that's fair. So on the green belt, so someone came in after the fact and put that rule in. So that brings up the question of I'm pretty sure this rule only really applies to them. So someone clearly came in before and said, hey, that tennis court, we don't want to see another one. Here's the rule. Boom.
I believe that the city in their infinite wisdom said we have a parks district, and the parks district should, going forward, have a green belt. Protect the neighbors.
Yeah, I guess we really don't know.
We don't
making
know.
up.
And if we follow that assumption, a lot of things that government does is downright stupid. They're not always in our best interest. It's usually by people that have their own agendas when they make these rules. And I continue to see officials acting in their own personal interest and not in the best interest of their constituents, be it at any level of government.
Okay. So I'm on the fence still. It sounds like you're more of a yes.
I think they met the statute.
Okay. I'm trying to get a feel for, as discussion is,
Can I-
which way you're going to vote too.
So can I also interject, because remember, if you want them to build it in a particular way, pursuant to a particular set of plans, pursuant to particular conditions, that needs to be included in your motion.
Yeah.
And it needs to be very specific with respect to I don't know where you're going, but if your inclination is to approve, and it does get approved, we're going to have to be very specific with respect to those conditions, how it has to be built, all of those things, so that there's no question for staff to have to deal with in the future when it's processed.
I think if we're
I've
going to...
got one more question for him. I'm sorry, I
Okay.
don't mean it. So conceivably, we could follow Brad's train of thought and add yet one more that says,
Well, currently you haven't added any commissions.
No,
You haven't
no, no.
you haven't even had a vote.
no, I understand, but what I'm saying is,
No, I think to do what you're saying and to also keep it in the rules, as we say you're currently out of conformity by X square feet. You must to be granted this, you must reduce your non-conformity by 60%.
whatever.
And
I guess my other question was,
so it's guaranteed, because that's what we like, is that it's improving it,
Right.
and that would guarantee the improvement.
my other question would be, and I don't know that I'm kind of like with Kevin, I'm not sure I can go there, because we don't know, but the question is, do we have the ability to put another condition on it that we haven't even discussed?
I mean, we can do anything we want. We just got to discuss
what I
it until
thought.
we get to the point where
Yeah.
where we feel that we can, where everyone wins.
So, I mean, certainly one condition you can put on it is that the exception is approved based on this particular plan given to us tonight.
That's rough, and I think
Well,
we would have to figure out a way to keep them
seems-
tied to it without being that specific one, because I mean, there's no way it's going to end up being exactly like that.
Well, isn't that what a building permit is anyway?
Yeah.
You come in with, this is what I'm gonna build.
Sure, but they haven't designed the whole thing because they're trying to see what they can get away with.
That's one way to put it.
That's not what he meant.
What I meant.
Yes, it is.
Well, you could certainly reference this plan and say that the encroachment has to be
Sure,
no
I mean, we
more
can
than the
attach, I'm pretty
encroachment
sure
that
we
is
can
on this
attach.
plan.
Yeah.
I mean, nothing else, just say your setback has to be at least 20 feet.
Okay,
Is
sure.
that what the
I mean,
plan
that can
is?
be one, yeah.
That was
It
really
must
what
be
the
at
plan
least
is.
20 feet, must be reduced by 40%. We can think of other,
It's close to 20 feet anyway, probably not exact.
and then, I mean, we can set the restraints for their design to conform to, or we can just say no, too.
Yeah, so let me just, before we get into, maybe this is a solution.
Sure.
I'm still a little hung up on, I appreciate the club came back and they did some work and they tried to talk to some people. But in what's given to us, I have to take your word. I can't see what questions were asked. I can't see the results of the interview. I can't, follow up with people.
That's fair.
Right, I don't know what, I don't know if, I'm not making any accusations. I don't know what kind of bias was in the questions or who was leading. I do know that I have here, my dues letter from the club that came out a month ago, and it didn't say anything about reach out. The sentence says, while facilities haven't undergone any major changes this year, we continue to explore expanding our current tennis footprint to more fully build out our program. We appreciate the member feedback we have received regarding this project, and we continue to welcome thoughts and comments. If I was trying to get more buy-in from my membership, I would have went into more detail. I would have asked more questions. I would have, pointed to the plan. Their plan is on the website, but it's literally a link in the about that says tennis plans that goes right into a deep dive into the plans about it. And so, again, I put all that together, and I just don't know how much weight to put into what questions were asked, how they were answered, and how they were measured, and how they were presented back to us. So maybe they're great, maybe they're not. They are very much inconsistent with all of my neighbors that live in the Hatley area. Very, and I don't think they changed in the last 3 months. And I mentioned it the last time that things noise-wise get worse when we lose our foliage. Well, we've lost our foliage in that pickleball and tennis court. I mean, I sat out there this afternoon looking at these plans, and I can't sit on my deck because I'm just all the noise. Going on from just them playing, which is, that's their right, that's their thing, that's what they do. So there is still this issue of, it's not just we're getting something back as far as land, something back as far as impervious cover. They are adding 2 more tennis courts. They're gonna do tournaments that they've talked about. They're gonna have more things going on there. So there is a trade-off that's gonna happen. It's not just we're getting impervious cover back or more greenbelt space. I feel like that's a problem for me, especially given just what I've experienced from living here as long as I have.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I think that's something I thought about a lot too, is that, and for me, I kind of thought about it in the way that there are ways that they can build 2 more courts and not have to talk with us or deal with us at all. So I think all those issues, they don't go away. I mean, they're still there. So either way, there's a way for the pickleball and the noise and all that stuff to occur without us being involved.
Yeah, and I'm not arguing.
And so that's why that
That's
doesn't
the city
concern
code
me.
and noise ordinance. That's what that should address.
Well,
right?
I do understand that. And in some ways, I kind of think, given this is a one of one, and this is part of the park, and this is a common amenity, this is in some ways a little bit above our pay grade.
Sure.
Versus what we do for every individual residence when we look at this kind of
Well,
stuff.
I mean, again, we need to go back to the introduction that Brad made.
Right.
The focus isn't on on the noise or the trees for our decision. The club has the authority to build these courts. The only issue that we are wrestling with is are we okay with them putting part of those tennis courts in this setback or not? All the other stuff is in some ways irrelevant to the decision that we have to make.
I don't believe it's irrelevant by the way I read the code. And if somebody can tell me I'm wrong, that we shouldn't consider noise, then please tell me.
Right, the findings, I mean, it's this board's it's your job to determine public convenience, welfare will not be substantially permanently injured. Well, I think welfare, if you go look up the definitions of welfare of the community, it's going to include all of those things. So how you fall on that answer is up to you, but it definitely is inclusive of the welfare of the community is clearly inclusive of those types of things. And you can take those types of things into your consideration. How you land on that is your job and your decision, but it's certainly part of the decision.
Yeah, I don't see the difference of the welfare, how the public's going to be affected if the court is moved 20 feet south and they can do it versus here. But that being said, this is an opportunity for us to improve the public welfare and attach things to it. I mean, they want this, they really want to put the courts in that green belt zone. And if we want to grant them a special circumstance or whatever this is called, we can help benefit the community more. If these are things that concern you, like, I don't know, think of a few and we can add it to a laundry list of things that will let them break the setback.
You read the public comments?
I did, I read,
All 100 or 50 or whatever.
there were
many
97 or something,
Yeah, a lot of them.
just
Some of
last
them
week, yes.
got rejected because they didn't meet a timeline
Yeah.
that wasn't published, but that's neither here nor there. It was overwhelmingly in support, and they put it in their own words. So that might address what they said that they did, and these people put it in their own words. So.
Well, I looked at all the comments too, and, 99% of them were basically coming back saying, I like the tennis courts, I think we should have them, which no more information than that. It's sort of like Western Hills put out an email to the members saying, we need your support, send an email to these people and say this.
I'm sure they
Which,
did.
no problem with that, but they're sort of all boilerplate. My concern, I don't worry too much, noise is a problem with pickleball, and I agree with that. I'm not concerned about, we're not here about noise necessarily, unless the setback causes more noise. We're not here about drainage, because the drainage is the city issue. We're not, trees, I love trees, if they want to cut them down, and they don't make heritage trees, they can cut them down. But we're here because they want to build into a 30-foot setback. And I agree with Brad's opening, and that's what it is. And we have a code that basically says that we cannot increase the extent of nonconformity of a building or a structure. And that's what we're doing if we approve into the 30-foot setback. So I'm toying with, I don't have a problem with tennis courts. I like tennis courts. I think people, I really don't have a problem with pickleball courts, except the darn things apparently are noisy. And I can hear Corky when I walk in the morning with bing bong back and forth all the time. But the question I have in my mind is, and I agree with what Bob said, is we have, do we have the authority of doing it? If we do it here, where does it stop? So someone now wants to have a house that's not in conformity, they want to build that house bigger, and they want to keep it in the setback when they do that. And now we say yes here, can they say, oh, you already did it once, now you can do it again?
But they're reducing the amount of footage in the setback.
They're still in the setback though, Bob.
We can't make them take it out. They're reducing it. That's why I'm struggling.
Well, we did get it moved at least 10 feet in our favor.
But point blank, if we approve this, it's 416 feet less in the setback than there is today. Less, not more.
Yeah. So, which is.
So they're not increasing
Way to
it.
justify it, I agree.
They're not increasing it, they're reducing it.
I'm not saying I'm yay or nay on it, I'm just
No, I
saying
got it,
that's
but
what I'm toying with in my mind.
So to me, if somebody says, I want to build a house and go more in the setback, it's like, you're more, not less. So it's defensible.
Well, with one exception, or maybe not exception, but you are increasing it, and I understand the immediate neighbors that are on,
wherever.
Wallace. On Wallace, the two immediate neighbors sent positive notes, and I know they know all about
They
this.
know, yeah.
So those two, that's fine. But you are now moving, while we're getting set back over a big picture, while we're making the conformity less big picture, we are now moving the conformity behind the people that live on Pleasant Cove. Because that one property where this second court is. This is that's the Pleasant Cove property. And
That's the what?
This
Pleasant
property
Cove.
is the people that own Pleasant Cove.
Yeah.
The McMahon's property that was over here, this is, I can't remember who this
Yeah.
is. You know, if you were now moving that conformity to, next to my backyard, I'd probably have an issue with it. And I don't believe I saw those people, any comments from them, and I don't know if anybody's talked to them. I don't know what they know, I don't know anything about it, but it's, you know.
Don't know.
But that is where it's not a zero-sum game, right?
But that's noise, not setback.
I'm not talking, I am talking about setback. This is, that's their property, the Pleasant Cove property, that's the property line.
Okay.
So now the setback, so right now, they don't have it, this is just all,
Oh, right. Well,
Grandkids.
there is the sport court, which is there.
the sport court's here. There's the volleyball court,
the
which is never, the
volleyball
volleyball court, which is never used, which is a
Right,
giant,
right,
which is
right,
the
right.
giant.
But that's, isn't that the sport court? Or the
No, the
volleyball?
sport court's here, sport court's here.
No, the vol-
Oh, you're
volleyball-
right. You're right.
Yeah, that's just sand.
Right.
That's a cat litter box.
Yeah, it's a litter box is what we were talking
Yeah,
about.
that's fair.
So it's,
Oh, I don't think those people are gonna hear any, whether they put it in the setback or not, they're not gonna get any more or any less.
I'm not talking about noise, I'm just talking about just in general.
Oh.
When people build a
Closer
when people
closer
build a
proximity.
setback next to you, then that's impacting potentially your quality, what you can do. and how
And their
you do
house
it.
is fairly far away from that corner, but.
Well, let's
But
test.
that's still their property, that's,
Yes.
that's the issue I'm raising, I'm not. you know, we
Let's
haven't
test
heard-
the waters here, because I'm not getting a good read on all of y'all. If two of us vote no, this is gone. Are any of y'all definitely in the no camp? Are two of y'all in the no camp? Because if nothing's going to convince you, then we can just vote now. Are you feeling?
Not necessarily no cap.
Hmm?
I'm still toying on
You're
it.
still toying. All right. Are you?
I'm open to more conversation. but
Okay, fair enough.
I'm a no, given what we know, but if we can come up with something creative.
Okay. Well then, so I guess this is where it starts getting long.
Yeah.
Can I address this issue? I think I know the house you're talking about. Are you talking about the Butlers who moved into the McMahon's?
No, it's their western neighbor.
The Schofield's wrote, that was one of the letters I had to get after the first, meeting, and I did get that letter.
Everybody, the people at home are not able to hear us if we're not speaking into microphones, so,
And yeah, and all this needs to be on the record.
You can, yeah.
We need to make sure everything's on the record and we know who's speaking.
Okay.
and-
Sorry. Could be a little more professional.
Hi, I'm Ree Timmerman. So I believe you were talking about the school fields. I
No,
don't know if I'm pronouncing.
it's the one up the hill from Schofields.
Okay. So if it was the Schofields, they are the ones that actually are an adjacent neighbor. They share the property line. They did, because that was part of the contingency of the original BOA meeting, was to get the two neighbors that share the property line to write a letter saying they were not opposed to the project.
Okay.
And we did get those two people. So I'm sorry, I misunderstood which house you were talking about.
Okay. But did they write a letter?
But the Schofields don't live there anymore, do they?
I don't know, it was
I think
it
they
was-
sold- I
it was
think
the
they sold their house.
contingency, it was the contingency of the first BOA meeting, and they did
Yeah.
both say that. So they,
Yeah, fair enough. I'm just raising the issue that I didn't see anything from any of the Pleasant Cove folks, but it's,
Yeah, I guess long ago.
yeah.
At least the adjacent people have said yes.
Kevin, could I say something about that?
Sure.
State your name, please,
For the record.
for the record.
Zach Elkins. With respect to the neighbors, we have the letters from, a couple iterations ago, but the other thing that we wanted to do, we thought was the neighborly thing to do, would be to include them in our consultation as we put the landscaping plan and the drainage plan in place. And so they were all interested in being consulted about our plans, giving feedback, coordinating landscaping, coordinating the drainage, and working with our designer and assuring themselves that either the drainage would not impact them or that they wouldn't be sufficiently shielded by with landscaping. And we're putting much denser landscaping, more trees, et cetera, so I think they would be happy anyway, but this way they would be and we'd be happy to make that as part of the a condition, that we consult them, and they'd be involved in the design process.
Thank you.
don't really have anything to say unless if we gotta. I'm interested. If I give you 3 minutes, will you stick to 3 minutes? Okay, 3 minutes.
There's been new evidence presented tonight. Brooke Brown, 307 Nixon Drive. There's been new evidence presented by the applicant tonight. It's this new plan we're all talking about. No one in the community has been able to respond to that with their testimony. And that has been my concern. The procedural rules require that the applicant present their testimony before the hearing. They're to present it when items are posted for the agenda. Technically, they're to present it in their application. So the two things I want to say are they're claiming that there is less encroachment because they're going to put an asphalt tennis court on top of a sand volleyball court. I don't think that is less encroachment. I don't think you can count that sand volleyball court as an encroachment compared to putting an asphalt or whatever the product will be, hardscape tennis court on top of it. The second thing is under the comments that are presented tonight by the tennis court group are, we're willing to consider doing certain things. That's not, we will do those things. And if you require it, of course, then you've got to talk about enforcement. And so the fact that they will say we're willing to consider doing it doesn't mean that it will be done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would like to clarify that the meeting materials did have the new design in it. I asked them to show me a clearer design.
Yeah,
But no one's had an opportunity, excuse me.
They were posted on Friday.
No, hang on a second. When was this updated version added to the packet?
The second PowerPoint was put in the packet today.
I mean, like, I'm looking at the packet, and there's the outline.
The original packet had it in there. It's just
It was
a
in the
little hard to see.
original packet
Yeah,
too.
had it in
That's
Yeah,
true.
It's been in here.
The
This
oth-
was
the-
part of the agenda. I'm sorry. but-
Sorry, the thing that we're looking at tonight, that was,
No,
It's in there
But
in
it's
a
the same
different
thing.
form. It's just, this is just
easier to read.
pulls it out, but it is it is actually in there.
no, I'm gonna, let me just, let me hang on a second.
There was a request from a Board of Adjustment member for a little bit more detail on
The print, let me be very
And
specific.
that
with
board
my
of adjustment member was me.
So, yeah.
The-
And so even,
Desiree?
so even staff needs to please step up to the
Can't hear you.
microphone because we can't hear you. We don't know who you are. Thank you.
Desiree Adair, City Secretary. There was a request from, over the weekend, from a Board of Adjustment member for more detail on one particular slide to make it easier to follow. And that was relayed to the applicant so that they could bring it for presentation. So I don't think there were changes made to it. I don't know, they can say that, but that's just to clarify what happened there.
And I maybe didn't refresh my browser, so I generally don't know the answer to what I'm about to ask.
Otherwise, it would have been past the deadline for new
When was the
evidence.
when was the document, it's in the agenda packet, WHC updated presentation 01/11/2023 added to the agenda packet?
Today, we received it today.
Okay, so none of the other documents did they have that were in the agenda packet talked about what they were gonna do and how they talked to and all of that, is that correct?
No, I mean, there's
I think it's all the same except for a few slides that were in more detail.
That's what we were told.
That's what we were
page
told.
27 of the original agenda document has the proposed revised plan.
So if I could flip over the one from,
And it was put in the packet today so that they could present here tonight, because it's easy to pull up for us on the smart board. That's the reason why we put it there, for their presentation.
And the reason why we left the previous presentation in there and put this
Okay.
one in as
Mhm.
tonight's.
but the updated presentation, I just saw that when I was walking up here.
Sure.
Because I spent a fair amount of time this weekend going through all of this, trying to make sense and try to come up with a way that worked for everybody. And I did not see the accommodations you guys were trying to make in this updated document. So could be on me,
Yeah.
but
Well, that's why I asked them to provide a clearer drawing, because it is not easy to see
okay.
the revised design.
So I don't have a problem with continuing on. If you have a problem with continuing on, I think that would make you a no vote, and then
Yeah.
maybe we can start telling
I-
of no's.
I think there's a fair Mrs. Brown's point about the community had a lot of time to spend with this new thing, because I've studied this and I'd missed it too, this, the new stuff, so.
Does anyone else feel strongly about that?
I just have a question for staff. I'm
Okay.
just trying to understand. What I think I'm hearing is that the most recent document of the presentation was at the request of a board member, and it expanded on what was there, but it did not substantially change it. Is that a fair statement?
That's correct.
So a board member reached out, asked a question, and that question was relayed to the applicant.
Correct.
Mr. Attorney, when I asked you this question, if I could do this, what was your answer to me last week?
I think our rules actually say that there should be no, what's the actual?
I don't have the language, but it's not directly to
Right, there should,
the applicant.
any information gleaned for purposes of this board should be done through the board of its entirety.
And I will say, we did tell the applicant, they had a deadline to get things in the packet. That deadline was met. Anything else they wanted to present could be presented here tonight, and that's what the second version was put in this afternoon, and they were planning to present it tonight. So any new evidence that did not meet that deadline was not going to be included in the record until the day of the meeting, at which case they could share any new evidence with the board.
Sorry, I'm still confused.
We're getting,
I'm trying to, stupid me, real simple. Anything substantially different that we saw tonight that was not previously posted in the package?
I did not put the two PowerPoints next to each other. I was told they had a clarifying slide based on a board member's request, and they were going to present that tonight as evidence tonight.
Would y'all feel better if we, I mean, again, just extending this nightmare, would y'all feel better if we ask them to come back with a design that is like this, with a couple of constraints that we put upon them, and set a time frame and a time for the community to look at it, and then, I mean, this is assuming that if they do this, we're all going to vote yes.
But it seems to me, Brad, that if you want to put restrictions on it,
I think
that
we have to.
well, then somebody needs to propose a motion with the restrictions, and then.
Sure, that's
and
what
then-
we're talking
But you're
about.
talking about them coming back. I think we need to propose a motion that has restrictions, and then.
I don't
and then
think
the
anyone's
city-
ready to propose anything until we've discussed what we would propose.
I don't see the point of doing a do-over, a mulligan on this technicality, for the simple reason that this is the fourth hearing. The same group of people have pretty much been involved and saying the same things every single time. There's not an overwhelming new group of people bringing new testimony. It's the same rehash.
Okay, well, let's try to keep this moving. I will vote yes if I have some restrictions added on to it. You're obviously yes.
Yes.
What would get y'all on board for a yes? If anything.
Let me ask
Tell me
one.
if it's no.
I would like to see an engineering study, what it would take to move these two new tennis courts closer to the buildings, to see what kind of problems it kind of cause with the foundation, and have no minimum of 20 feet from the setback, and hopefully even further from the setback.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that might be too, I think that you can say that they need to be 20 feet from the setback, blah, 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 and then they can go and do their study and decide if they want to do it or not, based on.
They won't do it then. I mean, human nature would say we'll do the minimum we can.
Yeah.
So I have another way maybe that we can, the engineer, I believe, was talking earlier, and it was cost prohibitive to, I forget exactly what it was, but cost couldn't be considered part of the reason for asking for variance, and I don't think that's true.
No, you can't. Now, it's not that, like, we already paid for this, therefore that, it's more of like, doing, or this is how I see it as, is like, I want to put my fence line across this creek. By the rules, it would cost me $1 million, but if you grant me a variance, it'll cost me 10. I think everyone on the board would be like, well, the creek needs a fence and it costs $10, done. I think that's the kind of money we can consider, not just.
Well, I believe it's actually formulaic now,
Oh,
to
okay.
remove that from our, I mean. I
That's
think
just how
state-
I've seen it.
Yeah, I think state law, Charlie did.
This is a special exception. You're thinking about the variance
I know.
requirements.
I'm trying to find another way.
Right.
make
Well,
this work.
this is a special exception, and a special exception is provided for in the law that says that the city may allow for the Board of Adjustment to provide for special exceptions as provided for in the ordinance. And so we look to our ordinance for purposes of determining whether or not, and it's not an entitlement, it's a may grant, and it's based on the findings that you're empowered to do it, that it meets the it meets one of the special exceptions allowed for, right? And that you make these appropriate findings, and in order to meet those appropriate findings, if there are conditions that you believe are necessary to place on the applicant so that it will meet and allow for you to vote in the affirmative on those matters, then you may place those conditions on the applicant regardless of cost, because that's really not your concern. If this is what makes you satisfied, that if this condition costs $10 and that's going to ensure that there is no substantial or permanent injury to the convenience and welfare of the public, then that's lucky for the applicant. But if the cost is too much, well, the applicant has to make a business decision as to whether or not it's worth it for them to spend that money for purposes of compliance. But that's how it lays out. And just to real quickly, because I wasn't able to finish my statement, but as a reminder, this is a quasi judicial hearing. You are in essence a judge. We should not be reaching out to applicants as judges and having conversations or requesting information outside of this board, because the only thing that gets heard on appeal of any decision here is information that is presented here, accepted here, and under the rules and that have been adopted here.
That's pretty clear.
Looking for some thoughts. Anyone have any ideas of how to proceed here? Because I can just start naming things and see what sticks.
Brad, I think maybe since you have in mind that there are some conditions that you would want to place on this, one thing we could start with is you defining your conditions, and then we can see if that motion passes or doesn't pass.
Would that sway some of y'all's vote to a yes if we put some conditions on? No?
Depends.
Depends. Okay, well, just to throw out some conditions. First off, we could also just say, well, I don't know about that. As a backup to these conditions not working, we can always just vote no, and then they have it. No, that's dumb. All right, let's start thinking of some conditions. So I think we would need to say what the new setback is. So it's 30 feet now. We could say it's 20 feet. We can say that the existing impervious cover number must be reduced by a certain percentage of, the existing impervious cover encroachment that's non-conforming must be reduced by, so like, I think they said they, no, you don't like that?
No, you were saying impervious cover, and I thought it was just a simple statement of structure in a
Well, we got to word it somehow.
potato.
Yeah. So the existing, so it's the impervious cover that's non-conforming right now, and they said their new design reduces the overall encroachment, impervious cover encroachment by, I don't know how much. We can
400.
stipulate the percentage that of the total unconformity, the total. Yeah, we can stipulate the total unconforming impervious cover that we will allow. So there's the setback, there's the amount of impervious cover we could allow. We could do something with drainage. We could say that the designed flow, we could say that the site has to be designed to the standards. So they design it to be whatever the impervious cover is now. They can't exceed the flows off of that. And I'd say that's 50%. I think they said we could stipulate that they have to reduce the flows to a state where the site was developed at 40%. That would reduce those flows. And then I guess we might think of some more things to keep them in line, like the boundaries, so they don't interpret our things a different way. If there's some noise complaint things, I don't know, that would involve enforcement after the fact. I think we should probably keep our things to what is a permittable thing. So I'm not sure how we could put any stipulations there, but those are the three things that I could think of, and we'd obviously have to hash that out a little bit more.
I have a tennis question. No, this is simple. Is the distance between the back line and the fence, is that standard? Does that have to be something?
Yeah.
By rule?
19 feet.
Okay. So there's no give on that.
I know where you're going. Shrink that distance.
Yes, like,
Yeah,
because if you can do that, then you can do this on your land and we're done.
Zach Elkins. I think it would be suboptimal to shrink that distance just for playability. But you know, for some kinds of tennis, I think it would be fine. And so it's not out of the world, but it's just pretty suboptimal.
So that puts me in the. There seems like there's an option here that they can do that. Because when we're talking about adding all these conditions and all that, it's just getting so darn complicated so freaking fast.
Yes.
And
But that would be the idea of benefiting the community, as we think of ways to benefit the community with our stipulations.
So let me ask you a question. Why don't we just put in 3 or 4 racquetball courts and no tennis courts?
wait a minute.
Forget tennis, it's a dying sport anyway.
Racquetball is
Tennis during the pandemic took off.
Racquetball
fastest
courts.
growing sport.
But racquetball is the fastest growing sport in the world right now.
Pickleball or racquetball?
Or pickleball, I mean
Yeah.
pickleball. I
Yeah,
mean,
I was gonna say
I'm
racquetball's
sorry, I made
balls.
wrong, I meant pickleball.
All right, so I'm sensing some hesitation about stipulations. So is this are we going to close the door on that? Because right now I'm thinking it's looking like we say no and leaving them their only option of taking what we said to heart and redesigning it and coming back, which sounds horrible.
Or pushing ahead with the lawsuit.
Can I follow up on Kevin's point?
Sure. I mean, what
Zach
about
Elkins.
the lawsuit?
No, that wasn't my point.
No,
Oh,
that was
okay.
mine.
Hang
Kevin
on.
didn't say that.
I did not say that. I'm
Let-
trying to
Let's
help.
not talk about that.
Yeah.
Sure.
I'm
I mean,
not
at this
certain-
point, we need some ideas to make.
I'm
this
not
move
certain
forward.
whether the 19 feet is a deal breaker or not. We could, I mean, I'd rather save the space elsewhere than on the court itself, but we could look to minimize that space everywhere we can.
Yeah.
And if you give us a number, we would push it.
Yeah, but just so, full disclosure, I'm saying this in this, I'm not saying this in the way that you like. I'm saying this, I think if you can do that and still preserve the integrity of your game, you have enough land of your own to not be in the setback to do this. So that's,
Yeah, I don't think we have that wiggle room necessarily. I
Okay.
mean, I've never seen a tennis court that's been built that shortens that distance between the baseline and the fence, but.
well, I'm just one vote in this. I'm trying to figure out if there's,
Yeah.
that's where I'm coming from. It's more for,
We might be able to save some space on the other side, I would think. I mean,
Right.
we've-
yeah, I'm not asking this question in the context of trying to reduce the conformity. I'm asking this, is there a way to do more, to make this actually fit so this is, nobody has an issue, it's done on your property, it's done, and it doesn't cost you that much to tweak your design. And you don't have to go build all this other stuff.
Yeah, well,
That's where I'm kinda going here.
yeah.
Do you have something that could maybe add?
Yeah.
Yeah, if you do, you can go up and talk, because I think we're stuck.
I've seen more space.
Jenny Hill. I used to live in Rollingwood. I now live in Westlake. I think, and I'm on the board. I think that the point about we could put it, if we could move it in, then we have the space on our land to do it. I think we have the space to do it, and I think Brian pointed out with the little panhandle area, there's some other places we could definitely put 4 courts, but we're trying to also, that's gonna wipe out all the trees if we do that. So we're trying to take that into consideration as well, and keep everybody happy or try to make everybody happy, in a lot of different arenas. So that's hence the little bit that we wanna keep in the setback.
Okay, thank you.
I don't see sending them back to the drawing board again. I think they have scrubbed and scrubbed and scrubbed, and this is the best possible plan that they can put forward with the least amount of impact, given the constraints of the green belt being laid on them after the fact that those 2 tennis courts are there.
Gotcha. Well, we got the ear yes. We just need 3 more of them. Or 2 no's.
Yep.
I mean, I agree with Robert.
Okay.
I just don't see sending them back to the drawing board. I just don't think that's a solution.
Okay.
I would go yes if we could somehow tie them down to this plan I got today,
Okay.
which I'm not sure how you do that. One way might be said, the setback has to be 20 feet.
Sure. Council, is there a way that we can tie someone down to a preliminary drawing?
I am not an engineer or a planner, so I don't have an answer to that question. I can't give you the best way to tie them down to a particular condition. You'll have to, as they say, you'll have to ask this, the SMER, the subject matter expert, the SME. And I am not a subject matter expert in engineering, planning, mapping, any of that stuff.
Ideas?
Well, you can certainly say that the 2 new courts can encroach no more than 20 feet into the setback at any point. And as, that, which is essentially what this drawing shows you.
Why can you not, I don't understand the issue of not being able to tie them to this drawing.
Well, because it's rough. I mean, if you're not going to design a house on a napkin,
Well, it looks- It looks to me a lot more than.
Yeah, I think this is a pretty sophisticated CAD drawing, actually. But
would y'all feel comfortable building the designer? Here we go. Would you mind stepping up to the? So I think the question is, first off, state your name when I'm done, but I think the question is, does the drawing that we have presented now, is that enough for you to stay within these drawing constraints, or is this just very rough?
David Cazares, MWM Design Group. Yes, that drawing is done in CAD. It is based on the shape of the currently proposed courts that were submitted for permit with the California corners cut off of it. So dimensionally, it is the same.
Okay, so this layout, if we said that the final design has to look like this, that's totally cool.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right, well, there's a step. We can attach the drawing to the motion. So does that make you a yes?
I will go yes.
Okay. So I'd still like to see some drainage stuff, but I also like to see this move forward. What are your thoughts?
I'm having a hard time making it a yes just because it'll happen one way or another,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like just saying that the noise issues and other issues are irrelevant just if they did it on their own property.
So you think that the public welfare is not being met?
I can't in good conscience ignore it.
Okay, no, that's fair. I mean, I
That's just-
think that's totally fair.
Because the difference is we got put on this board to make this decision.
Sure.
Not in what they do. That's why I was trying to go where they could come up with a formulaic way. It takes it just out of our hands, which I think was the intent of the state
Mm-hmm.
when they set up this, so communities weren't stuck making these kind of decisions. Right, and I would have liked to have seen that done a couple of years ago or whatever that was, but that's not where we're at. So I mean, the club is an asset, but it's still a private club, and I don't think we'd be doing this to this level if it was anybody else.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of where I'm hung up, and I'm the new guy here, so.
Okay, WAC board, whoever wants to talk. The question is, if we grant you a variance, I mean, not a variance, if we grant you a special exception, tying this drawing to the yes, is that good enough for y'all? Is that a yes, or do you really actually not like this drawing?
With all due respect, it
Yeah.
doesn't matter what they think.
It's not their decision.
It's
Sure,
not
but
their,
if we
it's
say-
not their decision, it's your decision.
Yeah.
You
but
should be voting and you're gonna get your answer.
If we say yes to it and it's something that they don't like anyways, and it's essentially a no.
They're
we
just
would've
gonna,
voted
but
no.
they're not gonna do it, and
Right.
that's,
I mean, if you're trying to negotiate, that's one thing, but that's not how this is set up. This is set up for them to present their evidence,
Okay.
make their best argument, for y'all to determine whether or not it meets the standards of the ordinance, and if it doesn't without conditions, adding conditions so that it would do so. And if it doesn't with conditions, then you have to vote in the way that you believe is appropriate. But this is not a negotiation
Okay,
process.
fair enough.
This is a quasi-judicial proceeding.
All right, just trying to keep some sort of balance. Never mind.
Yeah.
Okay.
would you like a motion?
Well, I have
can
to
always
figure
make
out
a
how I'm
motion.
going to vote now. Because I
And
guess,
for the record, one motion, you can have a motion, you can have another motion, you can have another motion. Y'all can motion all night long, all right? So one thing doesn't, one thing, I would prefer that you not. But my point is that this is not a, this is not a one and done deal. Y'all can negotiate amongst yourselves. I don't want you negotiating with the applicant.
Okay.
Totally fair.
I think I would like to add something to it, because I think it's feasible for them to drainage-wise. I think it's feasible to improve everything just a little bit more and say that site discharge must be reduced by an additional 5% from current existing discharge rates.
Do we have current discharge rates?
No, but the engineer knows what the current impervious code.
Okay.
Any
All I'm asking is-
engineer.
Can we establish a baseline?
Yes, current conditions.
Current.
That's how everything's established
Okay.
anyway. So
Not my area. of
they
expertise.
can't currently exceed the existing discharge rate now.
Okay.
So
You want a reduction.
So if we say that the site discharge has to be reduced an additional 5% from the current discharge rates, it's probably not a lot, but it's something, and it certainly would make me feel better that drainage. at least something, everyone always, points to this site as a problem with drainage. So I think that doing something like that would help the community just a little bit more. Does anyone have a problem with that? Okay, well then
Formulate a motion.
let's get this together. So, does anyone else share the feelings about the public welfare and convenience not being substantially injured?
Just a reminder, I was just reading one. Remember, there's three.
Yes.
You're going to have the affirmative vote on all three of them, and I'll just read them so that everybody hears them. The Board of Adjustment is empowered under the chapter that you have to have affirmative findings that the Board of Adjustment is empowered under Chapter 107 of the City's Code of Ordinances to grant the special exception. That the public convenience and welfare will not be substantially or permanently injured in the granting of the special exception. The granting of the special exception will not adversely affect the public health, convenience, safety, or general welfare. Those are the three affirmative findings that you need.
Okay, we definitely know one of us doesn't think we can find these. Does anyone else find that?
Well,
Because if you do feel that we can't meet these, your vote is no, and that would give us 2 no's, and then we don't even have to write the stipulations. We can just vote. So no? Okay, great. Okay. Then this should be slightly fun. So we have, what is this drawing? What is the best way to attach a drawing to our motion?
We'll name it, and it'll be referenced in the conditions.
So this
Exhibit A, I suppose we
this
could name it.
wasn't in the packet originally. This-
Yeah, that's an issue.
Yeah.
Well, there is one in the packet that is substantially the same. You can just, page 27 of the packet has the revised design.
That's not that
Yeah,
close to it.
Yes, it is.
I don't
These white lines here.
I don't have a problem with this body accepting this document outside the normal process, right? So if you want to use that as part of your exhibit, we can. But it's a problem because it's anytime we do anything that is outside the norm, we create problems.
Okay, so within the agenda packet, this document is pretty obviously identified. It is page 27 of the agenda packet, and the white lines that I think we're all in agreement on is mentioned as the proposed courts with California corners.
I would disagree. That 27 is not the same as what we're.
You're looking at the PDF.
The white.
Page 20.
Oh my gosh. Thank you.
It's hard to see, but it's there.
I can't remember. It's been a long 3 days. Was that document submitted by staff or was that submitted by the applicant during the hearing?
This,
The document that we were referencing, this document.
Accurate during the hearing.
All right. If y'all want to accept that, I'm totally comfortable with that.
I think it's easier to identify the one in the packet if y'all don't have a problem with that. I can call it out.
Okay.
As page 27 of the agenda.
Okay.
Pack. Okay. And then, so we had that, and then we had mine about reducing the site discharge by 5% of its existing, from current existing conditions. Does that go with y'all? Okay, great. So, this part has always confused me. If I just say in the motion that we have found that we've met these, that's good enough. We don't have to vote on each individual one, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's always going to be dependent upon the factual situation at the time, right? If you ask for a motion for approval of conditions 1, 2, and 3, and you get 2 people to vote no, you're going to want to clarify to make well, then I guess, yeah, you're done. So yeah, you can do it all in one.
Okay,
So,
okay.
yeah.
All right, who's writing this down? Because it's going to get choppy. So, I move to approve the what should I call this? I move to approve the special exception as presented under regular agenda item number 3, after having found that the Board of Adjustments is empowered under Chapter 107 of the City's Code of Ordinances to grant the special exception. Also, that the public convenience and welfare will not substantially or permanently injured in the granting of the special exception. The granting of the special exception will not adversely affect public health, convenience, safety, or general welfare, with the added stipulations that the final permitted court layout must follow the proposed courts with California corners as laid out in page 27 of this meeting's agenda packet, also known as impervious cover calculation fence and tree plan, drawn by MWM Design Group. Further, proposed site stormwater runoff must be reduced by 5% of its current existing as-built conditions. I think that sounds right. Okay.
Second.
So this needs to be a roll call vote. We'll start down with.
So quick, we get to discuss first, there's a question, right?
I don't know if we get to
Yes, you
discuss.
can, yes, you can.
Okay, we can discuss.
Yes, you can discuss it.
I like what you guys are doing, but I want to ask a question.
Okay.
Are you okay if this is a precedent going forward? That you're gonna start putting, well, okay, we're gonna make drainage better. We're gonna let people do this, but we're gonna do this, but we're gonna let.
Well, I think it's pretty common for cities to grant people exceptions if they're providing another thing. So I think that the fact that that this new design reduces the unconforming encroachment, and that we improve drainage, I think that's a win for the city. And I think it addresses a lot of people's concerns about trees more. So I think I see it as a win. Now I can definitely see how other people might start saying, well, I'll give you this and this and this. But I guess if other people have when the next person comes and says, I want to do this, and in exchange I'll do this and this and this, I guess we take it case by case. I see your concern. One thing I guess we didn't discuss is that we just took them for their word for how much the encroachment was going down. I just realized that.
So you can amend your ordinance?
So we can amend the ordinance.
I mean, I'm sorry, amend your motion.
Yeah, amend the
Sorry.
motion.
If that's a concern.
The reason I asked the question is for anybody who's still listening, is that when we started this process 3 months ago,
Mhm.
you raised the point that we haven't done a lot of these and we're kind of wiggling our way through it.
Sure, yes.
So that's why I'm just, okay, now we're about to do one.
Mhm.
We're really cool with doing it this way. So,
What do y'all think about that?
you're gonna vote on it, so that'll say.
Yeah.
Each case has its own set of conditions, and you want to be consistent and fair, but I don't see that any one vote necessarily sets a precedent. because every case has its own particulars.
Yep.
Do y'all think we should add some more numbers for, since we just took their word for what the encroachment was going down as? Do you think we should just stick with how the motion was presented, or do you think we should add some more concreteness to it, less vague?
I'm ready to call the question.
Okay.
Agreed.
Okay, well then, any more discussion? No, okay, well then, we'll do a roll call vote.
Turner, yes.
Shell, no.
Keith Martin, yes.
Jerry Spital, yes.
Brad O'Donnell, yes. The motion has passed with 4 for and 1 against. And so that we will close the regular agenda item number 3. And I move to adjourn the meeting. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
It is 8:20. Okay.